Why female narcissism is so often misunderstood. Female narcissism rarely looks the way people expect it to. It doesn't always shout. It doesn't always dominate the room. It doesn't always wear arrogance like armor. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it smiles. Sometimes, it looks like devotion, sacrifice, charm, beauty, or even vulnerability. And that is exactly why it is so often misunderstood and so devastating to the people caught inside its gravity. Imagine a woman who appears confident but fragile, admired yet insecure, generous yet quietly entitled. She is praised for her looks, her charisma, her ability to hold everything together. People say she's strong. People say she's impressive. People say she's been through so much. But behind closed doors, something feels wrong. Conversations revolve around her emotions. Conflicts always end with someone else apologizing. Love feels conditional, attention feels demanded, and admiration feels required just to keep the peace. You start questioning your own reality, your own needs, your own worth, and you can't quite explain why. This is where female narcissism hides. Not in obvious cruelty, but in subtle control. Not in loud dominance, but in emotional leverage. Society often misses it because women are socially conditioned to express power differently, while male narcissism is more likely to show itself through overt dominance, status, or aggression. Female narcissism frequently operates through appearance, emotional influence, comparison, and moral superiority. It blends seamlessly into roles we're taught to admire: caretaker, partner, mother, achiever, making it harder to name, harder to confront, and easier to excuse. That misunderstanding leaves many people trapped. They feel guilt instead of clarity. They feel confusion instead of validation. And worst of all, they feel isolated. Because when they try to explain what's happening, others don't see it. She seems so nice. They're told. She means well. You're probably overreacting. And slowly, silently, the damage deepens. This video exists to shine a light where confusion lives. Not to label or diagnose, but to bring understanding where there has been silence. Because once you can see the pattern, you can no longer unsee it, and that awareness is the beginning of freedom. If this topic resonates with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating honest, thoughtful content that explores the psychology behind complex relationships. Quick question for you. A female narcissism is harder to spot because it's often expressed emotionally rather than overtly reason. B. Female narcissism is rare and mostly misunderstood because it doesn't exist. Comment A or B below and share your thoughts. The hidden core: shame, insecurity, and low self-worth. At the very center of female narcissism is not confidence, power, or superiority, it is shame. Deep, unresolved, often invisible shame. This is the part most people never see, because it is carefully buried beneath charm, beauty, competence, and control. But everything flows from here. Insecurity is not a side effect, it is the engine. Low self-worth creates an unbearable inner tension. On the surface, she may appear composed, even impressive. But internally, her sense of value is fragile and unstable. She does not feel inherently worthy. She feels valuable only when reflected back through admiration, desire, attention, or compliance from others. Without that reflection, the internal narrative collapses. Doubt rushes in. Fear follows close behind. Shame tells her she is not enough. Insecurity whispers that she is replaceable. And instead of sitting with those feelings, instead of processing them, she learns to manage them externally. Control becomes regulation. Validation becomes survival. Other people become mirrors tasked with confirming her worth. When those mirrors stop reflecting what she needs, discomfort turns into threat. This is why reactions can feel disproportionate. A small criticism feels like annihilation. A boundary feels like rejection. Someone else's success feels like humiliation. These moments don't simply hurt, they activate the core wound. The unspoken belief resurfaces. If I'm not special, I'm nothing. And that belief is terrifying. Rather than confront that internal emptiness, she protects herself by deflecting it outward. Comparison replaces connection. Superiority masks vulnerability. Entitlement becomes a shield against self-doubt. And over time, this coping strategy hardens into a personality pattern. What began as protection becomes manipulation. What began as fear becomes control. It's important to understand this, not to excuse the harm, but to see the truth clearly. Female narcissism is not driven by self-love, it is driven by self-rejection. The relentless need to be admired exists because the inner self feels unlovable. The demand for loyalty exists because abandonment feels inevitable. The refusal to accept fault exists because shame feels fatal. When you understand this core, everything else makes sense. The sensitivity, the defensiveness, the emotional volatility, it all traces back to one unresolved question echoing beneath the surface. Am I enough? Until that question is faced internally, no amount of external reassurance will ever be enough. Trait 1. Obsession with appearance and external validation. For many female narcissists, appearance is not simply about self-expression or enjoyment, it is a lifeline. It is the most visible currency through which worth is measured, safety is secured, and power is negotiated. Beauty, presentation, youthfulness, and desirability become proof of existence. Without them, the internal shame threatens to surface. From the outside, this obsession is often praised. She is polished, put together, admired, complimented. People notice her style, her body, her face, her presence. What they don't see is the anxiety beneath the surface. The constant scanning of rooms, the subtle comparisons, the silent calculations. Who looks better? Who's getting more attention? Who might replace me? Validation is never optional. It is required to keep the inner world from collapsing. External admiration temporarily soothes the insecurity, but it never lasts. Compliments fade. Attention shifts. Someone younger, thinner, more charismatic enters the space. And suddenly, the calm fractures. What looks like confidence cracks into jealousy, irritability, or quiet contempt. Because when her value depends on being the most desirable, someone else's beauty feels like a personal threat. This is why attention becomes transactional. Praise is expected. Recognition is monitored. Appreciation is subtly demanded. When it isn't given freely, or when it's given to someone else, resentment builds. She may shame, mock, or undermine to reclaim the spotlight. Not always overtly. Often through sarcasm, subtle put-downs, or emotional withdrawal. The goal is not cruelty for its own sake, but restoration of balance. If she feels smaller, someone else must be made smaller too. Plastic surgery, extreme dieting, excessive spending on appearance, or relentless self-curation can all be attempts to outrun the fear of becoming irrelevant. Aging feels terrifying, not because of vanity alone, but because attention has been her anchor. Without it, the old question returns. Who am I if I'm not admired? It's important to understand that this obsession isn't about loving how she looks. It's about fearing what happens if she's no longer seen. External validation becomes the mirror she uses to confirm her worth. And the tragedy is this. The more she relies on that mirror, the less she develops an internal sense of value. The reflection becomes everything, and the self behind it remains painfully unseen. Trait 2. Strategic seduction and manufactured charm. Strategic seduction in female narcissism is rarely accidental. It is calculated, selective, and deeply tied to survival, rather than desire. This is not the carefree flirtation of someone who enjoys connection. It is a learned skill, sharpened over time, used to secure admiration, attachment, and control, especially from those perceived as valuable. Her charm feels effortless, but it is anything but. She studies people instinctively. She senses what makes them feel important, desired, needed. She mirrors their values, echoes their dreams, and reflects back an idealized version of who they want to be. Around her, others feel chosen, special, seen, and that feeling becomes addictive. What they don't realize is that the charm is not intimacy, it's strategy. Unlike overt seduction, which is loud and obvious, this version is quiet and precise. She does not seek everyone's attention, only the attention that matters. Status, resources, influence, admiration, protection. These are the currencies she understands. When she identifies a high-value target, her warmth intensifies. Compliments deepen. Vulnerability appears. She shares just enough pain to evoke empathy, just enough mystery to invite pursuit. The bond forms quickly, often before the other person realizes what's happening. This charm is not sustained by emotional openness, but by control of perception. She wants to be desired without being fully known. Accountability threatens the illusion. Genuine mutuality would require her to be seen as flawed, and that is intolerable. So, the charm must remain curated, manufactured, safe. When the target becomes attached, the dynamic shifts. Seduction gives way to expectation. Attention becomes assumed. Loyalty becomes demanded. Any withdrawal feels like betrayal. And if admiration fades or boundaries appear, the charm collapses into coldness, contempt, or punishment. What once felt intoxicating now feels destabilizing. The same person who made you feel extraordinary now makes you feel inadequate for wanting clarity, consistency, or reciprocity. It's important to understand that this behavior is not driven by pleasure, but by fear. Seduction becomes a tool to avoid abandonment. Charm becomes a shield against shame. If she can keep others captivated, she doesn't have to face the emptiness underneath. But the cost is high. Relationships built on performance cannot survive authenticity. To the outside world, she looks magnetic. To those drawn in, she feels confusing. And to herself, she remains unseen. Because no matter how convincing the charm, it cannot create the one thing she truly needs. Genuine self-worth that doesn't depend on someone else wanting her. Traitor. False confidence, built on comparison. What looks like confidence in a female narcissist is often not confidence at all. It is contrast. It exists only in relation to someone else, being smaller, weaker, less admired, or less chosen. Her sense of worth does not rise from within. It is constructed externally, moment by moment, through comparison. She feels powerful not because she knows who she is, but because she believes she is above someone else. This false confidence is fragile, even though it can appear bold. It thrives in environments where ranking is constant appearance, success, attention, desirability. She scans rooms instinctively, measuring herself against other women, other partners, other mothers, other professionals. When she believes she is winning, she feels temporarily alive. When she believes she is losing, panic sets in. The smile tightens. The tone shifts. The competition begins. Comparison becomes her emotional oxygen. If someone else is praised, she feels diminished. If someone else succeeds, she feels exposed. She cannot simply admire another person's strengths because doing so would force her to confront her own insecurity. Instead, she finds flaws. She minimizes achievements. She reframes the narrative so that she remains superior or at least unthreatened. This is why her confidence often feels performative. It rises suddenly and collapses just as fast. One compliment can elevate her mood. One perceived slight can destroy it. The external world becomes a scoreboard, and she is constantly checking the numbers. How many likes? How much attention? Who walked into the room and changed the energy? What makes this particularly painful for those close to her is how personal it becomes. Friends, partners, even children may feel turned into rivals without ever choosing to compete. Support is conditional. Praise is tolerated only if it doesn't overshadow her. If you shine too brightly, she may subtly dim the lights. At its core, this behavior is not arrogance, it is defense. Comparison allows her to avoid looking inward. As long as someone else can be framed as less, she doesn't have to face the shame she carries quietly. But the cost is constant tension, isolation, and instability. Confidence built on comparison can never rest. There is always someone new to measure against, someone new to fear. True confidence is expansive. It allows others to rise without falling. False confidence contracts. It must protect itself at all costs. And until that distinction is understood, relationships remain trapped in a silent, exhausting contest no one ever agreed to enter. Trait 4. Money, status, and image as power. Money, status, and image are not just symbols of success for a female narcissist, they are instruments of power. They serve as visible proof that she matters, that she is untouchable, and that her worth cannot be questioned. Where others may see financial stability or social standing as tools for comfort or freedom, she experiences them as emotional armor. Money becomes a scoreboard. Spending is not simply about enjoyment or necessity, but about signaling dominance. Designer labels, luxury experiences, and public displays of affluence function as declarations. I am above the rules that apply to ordinary people. Even when resources are limited, the image must be maintained. Debt, instability, or long-term consequences are pushed out of awareness because confronting them would threaten the illusion of superiority. Status operates the same way. Titles, associations, and proximity to influential people become extensions of her identity. She introduces herself not just as who she is, but as who she knows, where she belongs, and what she has access to. Being seen in the right places, or aligned with the right names, reinforces her sense of importance. If that status is ever challenged, if someone outgrows her, surpasses her, or simply no longer validates her resentment, quietly replaces admiration. Image ties it all together. Curated perfection becomes a shield against shame. The world is shown a carefully edited version of her life. Success without struggle, confidence without doubt, power without fear. Criticism feels catastrophic because it threatens not just her reputation, but her emotional survival. To be seen as flawed would mean facing the belief she has been running from all along, that without the image, she might be nothing. For those close to her, this dynamic can feel transactional. Affection may fluctuate with financial contribution or social usefulness. Loyalty is rewarded when it enhances her image and punished when it doesn't. Relationships are leveraged, not shared. At its core, this obsession is not greed or vanity. It is desperation disguised as control. Money, status, and image promise safety. She never learned to give herself. But the power they offer is temporary. The moment the image cracks, the fear returns louder than ever. Trait 5. Idealization, devaluation, and fidelity issues. Idealization is how the relationship begins, and for a female narcissist, it feels intoxicating for both sides. In the early stage, her partner is not simply loved. He is elevated. He is seen as exceptional, different, finally worthy of her attention. She mirrors his dreams, amplifies his strengths, and reflects back an image of himself that feels almost heroic. This phase can feel like destiny. It is fast, intense, and emotionally overwhelming. Because it is not grounded in reality, it is grounded in projection. But idealization is fragile. It depends on the partner remaining a perfect extension of her needs. The moment he shows independence, fatigue, disagreement, or emotional limits, the illusion begins to crack. What once felt magical now feels threatening, slowly, often subtly. Admiration turns into disappointment. Small flaws are magnified. Effort is no longer enough. The same traits that were once praised become sources of irritation or contempt. This is where devaluation begins. It may not arrive as open cruelty. It often comes as withdrawal, criticism, disguised as concern, emotional distance, or comparisons to others. He feels himself shrinking, trying harder, giving more, hoping to return to the earlier version of her. But that version was never sustainable. It existed only to secure attachment and control. Fidelity issues often emerge from this cycle. For a female narcissist, loyalty is conditional. When her partner no longer provides sufficient validation or status, she may begin scanning for someone who does. This does not always look like immediate infidelity. It may begin emotionally seeking attention, admiration, or connection elsewhere, while maintaining the primary relationship. The presence of a higher value option reignites her sense of power and desirability. What makes this especially painful is that she may frame her behavior as justified. She convinces herself that she is neglected, unfulfilled, or misunderstood. Responsibility is externalized. The partner is left confused, blamed, and destabilized, while she pursues renewed validation without confronting her own patterns. At the core, this cycle is not about love or betrayal. It is about regulation. Idealization soothes her insecurity. Devaluation protects her ego. And process, on the men, fidelity becomes flexible when attachment no longer feeds her sense of self. And until that internal emptiness is faced, the cycle repeats, no matter who stands on the other side of it. Trait 6. Narcissistic parenting. Children as extensions of the self. Narcissistic parenting is not driven by the child's emotional needs, but by how well the child reflects the parent's identity. For a female narcissist, children are often experienced not as separate individuals, but as extensions of the self-living mirrors meant to validate her worth, competence, and superiority. Love becomes conditional, flowing most freely when the child enhances her image, and withdrawing when the child asserts independence or reveals imperfections. In early childhood, this can look like devotion. She may appear highly involved, attentive, even admiring. Praise is abundant when the child performs well, behaves well, or attracts positive attention. But beneath this warmth lies an unspoken rule. You are loved when you make me look good. Achievement becomes currency. Grades, talents, appearance, and obedience are rewarded not because they nourish the child, but because they elevate the parent. As the child grows, individuality becomes a threat. Natural expressions of autonomy, preferences, emotions, boundaries are met with confusion, criticism, or emotional withdrawal. The child learns quickly that self-expression carries risk. To stay emotionally safe, they adapt. They become the achiever, the peacemaker, the invisible one, or the golden child who carries the parent's unmet dreams. In many cases, one child is idealized while others are quietly devalued, creating rivalry and insecurity that can last well into adulthood. Empathy is limited. When a child is hurt, anxious, or overwhelmed, the focus often shifts back to the parent's experience. The child's pain is minimized or reframed as inconvenience, disrespect, or failure. Comfort is replaced by control. Guidance becomes criticism. Affection becomes transactional. What makes this dynamic especially damaging is its inconsistency. Warmth can disappear without warning. Approval can turn to disappointment overnight. The child grows up hypervigilant, scanning for cues, trying to earn stability in an environment where love is unpredictable. For the female narcissist, this pattern is unconscious. She is not intentionally cruel. She is regulating her own fragile self-worth through her children. But the cost is profound. Children raised this way often carry deep confusion about identity, self-value, and love. They may spend their lives trying to become enough for someone who never learned how to be enough for herself. Trait 7. Competition, jealousy, and the need to dominate. Competition is not an occasional reaction for a narcissistic woman. It is a permanent lens through which she experiences the world. Every room becomes a silent ranking system. Every interaction carries an unspoken question. Who is above me? And who is beneath me? Where a healthy person can coexist with others' success, she experiences it as an existential threat. If someone else shines, she feels dimmed. If someone is admired, she feels erased. Jealousy, in this context, is not about wanting what someone else has. It is about fearing what their existence takes away. Attention, validation, desirability. These are not shared resources in her inner world. They are scarce, fragile, and constantly at risk. So when another woman receives praise, affection, or opportunity, it feels like something is being stolen from her. The emotional response is immediate and intense, even if it never shows on her face. Rather than confronting this insecurity directly, she manages it through domination. She must reassert her position, subtly or overtly. Sometimes this looks like criticism, masked as humor. Sometimes it appears as unsolicited advice that undermines confidence. Other times, it surfaces as comparison, highlighting her sacrifices, her struggles, her superiority, or her suffering to reclaim emotional territory. Someone else's joy becomes an inconvenience that must be neutralized. This dynamic often poisons relationships between women. Friendships become unstable because closeness invites comparison. Support feels conditional. Compliments come with hidden barbs. Over time, those around her learn to downplay their achievements, censor their happiness, and stay small to keep the peace. What looks like harmony is actually quiet submission. In families, this competition can be devastating. A narcissistic mother may compete with her daughter's youth, beauty, or independence. Instead of celebrating growth, she experiences it as displacement. The child learns that success threatens love, and autonomy invites punishment. The bond becomes a battlefield where one must lose for the other to feel secure. What drives this relentless comparison is not confidence, but terror. Without dominance, she is forced to face an internal void, an absence of stable self-worth. Competition keeps her distracted from that emptiness. As long as someone else is below her, she does not have to look inward. But domination never brings peace. It isolates her, drains those around her, and guarantees that connection remains shallow. True intimacy cannot survive where someone must always win. The ripple effect. How female narcissism impacts relationships and communities. Female narcissism rarely damages only one person at a time. Its true impact spreads outward, quietly but relentlessly, like ripples moving across water, long after the stone has sunk. What begins as a difficult relationship often evolves into a distorted emotional ecosystem that affects partners, children, friends, workplaces, and even entire communities. In intimate relationships, the ripple effect starts with confusion. Partners may initially feel chosen, special, and deeply connected. Over time, however, that sense of closeness erodes. Communication becomes unsafe. Emotional needs are dismissed or reframed as attacks. Trust weakens as patterns of idealization and devaluation repeat. The partner may lose confidence, question their perceptions, and slowly withdraw from their own support systems, unintentionally isolating themselves in order to maintain peace. In families, the effects compound across generations. Children raised in narcissistic environments often grow up hyper-aware of others' moods, prioritizing harmony over authenticity. Siblings may be pitted against one another, creating long-lasting rivalry, resentment, or estrangement. Family gatherings feel tense, performative, or emotionally exhausting. The unspoken rule becomes survival through silence or compliance. Beyond the home, these patterns infiltrate social circles and professional spaces. In friendships, loyalty is demanded, but rarely reciprocated. Group dynamics become unstable as alliances shift and subtle power struggles emerge. People may feel drained after interactions, unable to articulate why. In workplaces, female narcissism can manifest as manipulation, credit stealing, or creating conflict behind the scenes while maintaining a polished public image. Productivity suffers, morale declines, and trust fractures. Communities feel the impact too. When influential individuals operate from insecurity and domination, collaboration erodes. Empathy is replaced by competition. Authentic connection gives way to performance. People learn to self-censor, avoid confrontation, and lower expectations rather than address the underlying dysfunction. What makes the ripple effect so powerful is its invisibility. Because female narcissism often presents through charm, vulnerability, or social competence, the damage is easy to dismiss or misattribute. Victims may feel alone, doubting their experiences, while the pattern continues unchecked. Healing begins when these ripples are recognized for what they are: not isolated conflicts, but systemic emotional disruptions. Awareness restores clarity. Boundaries interrupt the spread. And when individuals reclaim their sense of reality, the water finally begins to still. Awareness, boundaries, and the path to healing. Awareness is the moment the fog lifts. It is the quiet, sometimes devastating realization that what you experienced was not random, not imagined, and not your fault. For many people affected by female narcissism, awareness arrives slowly through exhaustion, through repeated confusion, through the painful sense that no matter how much love or effort you give, something always feels wrong. Awareness is not about labeling another person. It is about finally seeing the pattern clearly enough to stop blaming yourself. From awareness comes the most misunderstood yet transformative step: boundaries. Boundaries are not punishments. They are not ultimatums. They are not acts of cruelty. They are acts of self-respect. For those who have lived under narcissistic dynamics, boundaries can feel terrifying because they disrupt a lifetime of conditioning that equates love with self-sacrifice. Saying no, stepping back, or limiting access may trigger guilt, fear, or grief, but those emotions are not signs you are doing something wrong. They are signs you are breaking a cycle. Healing does not happen all at once. It unfolds in layers. At first, boundaries may be shaky and inconsistent. You may second-guess yourself. You may feel pulled back by nostalgia, hope, or the belief that if you just explain yourself better, things will change. But healing is not about convincing someone else to see you. It is about choosing to see yourself. As boundaries strengthen, something remarkable happens. Clarity replaces chaos. You begin to trust your perceptions again. Your nervous system slowly settles. Relationships that once drained you lose their grip, while healthier connections feel safer and more reciprocal. You learn that love does not require you to disappear, compete, or prove your worth. The path to healing also includes compassion both for yourself and, at a distance, for the woundedness that fuels narcissistic behavior. Compassion does not mean access. It does not mean reconciliation. It means releasing the belief that it is your responsibility to fix what you did not break. Ultimately, awareness gives you truth. And healing gives you back your life, not the life shaped by fear, comparison, or control, but one rooted in authenticity, peace, and genuine connection. This story is not really about the female narcissist herself. It is about the people who lived inside her emotional gravity and slowly lost sight of their own center. Across the chapters, we watched how charm disguised insecurity, how competition masked shame, and how control replaced genuine connection. What began as admiration turned into confusion, then self-doubt, and eventually exhaustion. The common thread was not cruelty for its own sake, but a relentless need to dominate, to be superior, to never feel small. And in that process, relationships were not nurtured. They were consumed. The deepest lesson from this journey is this: dysfunction does not always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks polished, successful, admired, even strong. But if a relationship consistently leaves you feeling diminished, anxious, or invisible, that is information worth listening to. Awareness is the turning point. Boundaries are the bridge. Healing is the destination. Applying this lesson to your own life starts with one brave shift. Stop asking, "How can I fix this person or this relationship?" and start asking, "How does this relationship make me feel over time?" Healthy connections expand you. Unhealthy ones shrink you. Learning to trust that internal signal and honoring it with boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary. Over time, choosing yourself does not make you cold or unloving. It makes you grounded. It allows space for relationships built on mutual respect instead of fear, reciprocity instead of performance, and love instead of control. Disclaimer: this video is for educational and informational purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional diagnosis, therapy, or treatment from a licensed mental health professional. Quick poll for you. A. I struggle to set boundaries because of guilt. B. I struggle to set boundaries because of fear. Comment A or B below. What parts of this story resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments so others can learn from your experience too. And if this content helped you gain clarity, please subscribe to the channel. It truly supports us in creating more meaningful, healing content like this.